Dear friends, welcome to the Essentials of Inorganic Chemistry. I am your friend Dr. Vidi Bhatt. Today I am going to start a chapter entitled Crystal Field Theory. This is going to be the first talk in the series of talks in this chapter, and in today's talk I will give you a brief introduction of the crystal field theory. Then I will explain you the orientations of the d orbitals, and finally I will discuss the splitting of d orbitals under the influence of octahedral and tetrahedral fields. Friends, in order to understand the upcoming discussion, there are a few prerequisites. Like you should know the Aufbau principle. Aufbau principle is the principle of staircase or ladder. It simply states that while filling up the electrons, you have to see that the lower levels are first occupied and then the higher levels. That is, say you have got some orbitals, then you will first fill the electrons in 1s orbital, then you will go to 2s orbital, then so on. Then you should also recall the Hund's rule of maximum spin multiplicity. The Hund's rule says that the electrons in degenerate orbitals should be arranged in such a way that the spin multiplicity is maximum, which means that, say, if you have 3 degenerate orbitals and 3 electrons, then you have to put 1 electron in each orbital. You will not put 2 electrons in one orbital and 1 electron in another orbital. It applies to the degenerate orbitals. Now, what are degenerate orbitals? Degenerate orbitals are orbitals having same energy or equal energy. Then you also need to recall the Pauli's exclusion principle. The Pauli's exclusion principle says that no 2 electrons can have the same value for all the 4 quantum numbers. In our case, you have to understand that according to the Pauli's exclusion principle, when you put 2 electrons in one orbital, then their spin must be different, that is opposite. Otherwise, when 2 electrons are there in the same orbital, the 3 quantum numbers are same, and if you put the fourth electron in the if you put the second electron in the same orbital with same spin, then all the 4 quantum numbers will become same. So the same concepts that you need to remember while filling up the electrons in the elements or the atoms or writing the electron configuration have to be applied over here. Some more prerequisites are there, but I will be explaining you as and when the new terms come into the picture. First, I will give you a brief introduction of the crystal field theory. This was given by Bethe and Van Vleck, and it is abbreviated as CFT. This was given in 1930s. Now, the most important feature of crystal field theory is the crystal field theory treats the coordination compounds or the complexes like simple ionic compounds. It does not consider that the complexes have covalent bonding. So it assumes that the bonding in coordination compounds is due to the electrostatic forces between positively charged metal ion and negatively charged ligands. And in case of neutral ligands, it considers it as dipoles. Now, even though this theory is very simple, this theory fits well for complexes of metal ions with small and highly electronegative ligands like F minus, Cl minus, OH2 or H2O, etc. But this theory does not work well with ligands having less polarity. The example is carbon monoxide. In carbon monoxide, your carbon and oxygen, and they are the neighbors in the periodic table. They are very near to each other, next door, no, not next door, next to next door neighbors in the periodic table, and so they have their electronegativity difference is very low, and therefore they have less polarity. So in that case, the crystal field theory fails to explain it. So there is a need for yet another more powerful theory called ligand field theory. Now, crystal field theory needs some modification to explain the difference between the spectra of the free metal ions and the complex ions. It fails to distinguish them. So considering the simplicity of the CFT, that is crystal field theory, and also keeping in our mind the complexity of the bonding in complexes, the crystal field theory is regarded as a theory which is too good to be true. So this was a brief introduction of the crystal field theory, and I have also included the limitations of the crystal field theory in this discussion. So let us first understand the orientations of the d orbitals and some important features. The d orbitals are five-fold degenerate. This means that there are 5 different d orbitals, and the energy of all these 5 d orbitals is same. The names of these 5 d orbitals are dxy, dyz, dxz, dx square minus y square, and dz square. Now you will see that the first 3 d orbitals have similar name, xy, yz and xz. These are the names of the planes in which these orbitals are located. So if you consider a Cartesian coordinate system with x, y and z axis, then you will understand that the dxy orbital lies in the xy plane, the yz orbital lies in the yz plane, and the dxz orbital lies in the xz plane. Now about the shapes of these d orbitals. Other than dz square, the d orbitals have a double dumbbell shape. You know the shape of the p orbitals. The p orbitals have dumbbell shape, but d orbitals have double dumbbell shape. So there are two. If you mix two p orbitals, then it will look like a d orbital, except the dz square orbital. Now I explained you that the dxy, dyz and the dxz orbitals lie in the xy, yz and the xz plane respectively. So just try to imagine a Cartesian coordinate system and the 3 d orbitals. You will understand that as the lobes of these orbitals lie in the plane, these lobes will not touch the x, y or z axis at all. They will be lying between the axes. Whereas when you come to the dx square minus y square and dz square orbital, you will find that the dx square minus y square orbital, the lobes of dx square minus y square orbital lie on x and y axis, whereas the lobe of the dz square orbital lies on the z axis. So in short, you will understand that the dxy, dyz and dxz orbitals do not touch the axis, whereas the dx square minus y square and dz square orbitals are on the axis. Now the first 3 orbitals, dxy, yz and dxz orbitals, are together known as T2G set of orbitals. Because they are similar, they are put in one group, and that group is named as T2G. Whereas the dx square minus y square and dz square orbitals are known as EG orbitals. The name for dxy, yz and xz is T2G, and the name for dx square minus y square and dz square is EG. Now in this picture I will show you the orientations of the orbitals. Let us first take a look at the dxy orbital. As I told you that it is double dumbbell, one p orbital and yet another p orbital. So double dumbbell at an angle of 90 with respect to each other. And you will see that the lobes lie in the xy plane. So it is called dxy orbital. Then dyz. You know, the axis naming is arbitrary, and just for sake of simplicity I have changed the name of axis, but you will still understand that the lobes lie in the yz plane. They do not touch the axis. In the same way, dxz, the lobes lie in the xz plane, between the x and the z axis. So this was something about the T2G orbitals. Now let us come to the dx square minus y square orbitals. Here also the shapes of the lobes are same, but it lies on the x axis and y axis. Then comes dz square. Now the question is, if you have xy, yz, xz, and then you start with x square minus y square, then logically you should have y square minus z square and x square minus z square. But instead of that you are having only one dz square. Actually this dz square orbital is a combination of dy square minus z square and dx square minus z square orbitals. You do not have 6d orbitals. Actually you cannot have 6d orbitals, and that is why the last d orbital dz square is a combined form of dy square minus z square and dx square minus z square. Now the question is, why can we not have 6d orbitals? The answer is, you know, for this is the number of orbitals is given by the angular momentum quantum number L. So for m is equal to 2, you will find that L will range from values -2 to +2. So -2, -1, 0, 1 and 2. That becomes only 5. You cannot have 6 orbitals. So for L is equal to 2, you can have only 5 values of m, and therefore you can have only 5 d orbitals. So in dz square orbital you will see that the lobes lie on the z axis, and some part is, a little part is there on the y and x axis also. Now I will give you some more explanation on this. Actually I have already given you the explanation on this orientations of the d orbitals. So in order to understand the crystal field theory, what you have to do is, first of all, imagine a Cartesian coordinate system 0, 0, 0, x, y, z. The origin is 0, 0, 0. And then you have to take one metal ion with 3d orbitals and put the center of that metal ion on the center of the Cartesian coordinate system. And then imagine all these 5d orbitals. If you can do that, then you will be able to understand the concepts that I am going to discuss ahead very easily. Let us come to the splitting of the d orbitals. The figure that I am going to show you next is going to show the nucleus of a transition metal ion coinciding with the origin, that is 0 0 0 of a Cartesian coordinate system. The 5d orbitals of this ion are thus originating from the origin of the Cartesian coordinate system. And now you will have 6 uninegative, means minus 1, 6 uninegative monodentate ligands which are slowly approaching the central metal ion as shown in the figure. Let us see. We will first take a look at the figure on the left hand side. You have a Cartesian coordinate system x, y, z axis. Then you have a center 0 0 0. On the center you have put the metal ion m plus n. And now you have point charges called in the crystal field theory, or otherwise you can call them uninegative monodentate ligands. Monodentate ligands with minus 1 charge. They are slowly approaching, they are coming near to the metal ion. All these 6. Now why did I show these 6 negative charges on the 3 axes, opposite sides of the 3 axes? Because you have to understand that these charges, they repel each other, and therefore they will try to approach the metal ion from the path which gives them minimum repulsion. So this is the positions, these are the positions from which if they approach the metal ion, then the repulsion between these negative ions will be minimum. So let us see now what happens if these 6 uninegative monodentate ligands approach the central metal ion, and in this part you have to imagine the 5d orbitals, because when these negative ions come closer to the metal ion, then first of all what will be on their way? The orbitals. I will explain you the right hand side figure after some time. The ligands are approaching the x, y and z axis, forming an octahedral field. See, if these ligands approach the metal ion in these directions, then what will be the geometry of the complex? It will be octahedral. See, this 4 will be in one plane and one up and one down. So that field is called an octahedral field. Now, as the ligands come closer to the nucleus of the metal ion, they will encounter the orbitals of the metal ion. First of all, the orbitals will come. They will not straight away go into the nucleus of the metal ion. There are orbitals before the nucleus. So thus, there will be repulsion between the orbitals because they contain electrons. So orbitals have some kind of negative charge. And the ligands, that is the point charges. There will be repulsion between the orbitals and the ligands. Now, the Eg orbitals, they are the lobes of the Eg orbitals lie along the axis. So the Eg orbitals that are oriented along the axis face stronger repulsion as compared to that of the T2g orbitals, because T2g orbitals are lying in the plane. As the point charges or the uninegative monodentate ligands approach the metal ion on the roads which are through the axis, the greater interaction of the ligands will be with the orbitals that are lying along the axis, and the Eg orbitals lie along the axis, that is on the axis. So due to this, the degeneracy of the 5-fold d orbitals will split into T2g orbitals with lower energy and Eg orbitals with higher energy. You know, the Eg orbitals will face greater repulsion, and therefore more the repulsion, more will be the energy and less will be the stability. So initially the d orbitals, the 5d orbitals which were degenerate, that is having the same energy, will now split into two, T2g and Eg. The Eg orbitals face greater repulsion and therefore their energy will be increased, whereas the T2g orbitals face lesser repulsion and therefore their energy will be decreased. So the 5d orbitals which were initially having same energy will not now have the same energy. Their degeneracy will split into two parts, T2g and Eg. The magnitude of splitting, the amount of splitting of these d orbitals because of the introduction of an octahedral ligand field is shown by delta O, and you will eventually see when I explain you the figure that there will be 3/5 delta O times of increase in energy of the Eg orbitals, whereas 2/5 delta O will be the decrease in energy of the T2g orbitals, which is as compared to that of the free metal ion. Now I will show you the most important figure, one and the only figure that you need to remember and understand for doing the basics of crystal field theory. You should never forget any part of this figure, then you will be able to do most of the basic things in the crystal field theory. See, right now I will explain you the left hand part of the figure. These are these 5 lines. They show the free ion and 5 degenerate d orbitals. The lines are little distant, but in order to save the space I have kept them like this, otherwise they have the same energy. All these 5 d orbitals have the same energy. Now you will find that in some books 2 steps are shown: free ion 5 degenerate d orbitals, then upon introduction of field, so some energy is increased, and then they will show it the effect of the octahedral ligand field. Just for the sake of simplicity I have shown only one. You can show 2 also. Now on this left hand side I am showing you the crystal field splitting because of the introduction of octahedral ligand field. Now what happens? When the octahedral ligand field is introduced, the degeneracy splits into two: T2g with lower energy, these are the 3 dxy, dyz and exz orbitals, and Eg with higher energy, these are the dx square minus y square and dz square orbital. The total splitting is equal to delta O, and the increase in energy is 3/5 delta O in case of Eg, and the decrease in energy is 2/5 delta O in case of T2g. Now sometimes a unit called dq is used in place of delta O, but you have to remember that delta O is equal to 10 dq. So you can either work in delta O or dq. For me delta O is simpler, and therefore I am using delta O. So now I have explained you the left hand side of this figure. So we have seen that how the d orbital split when an octahedral ligand field, or you will say 6 uninegative monodentate ligands, approach the metal ion. Now instead of 6 monodentate ligands, if there are 4 monodentate ligands and they approach the metal ion through the diagonals of the opposite faces of a cube, then what happens? And the field is called a tetrahedral field. The yellow lobes or the yellow circles, they indicate uninegative monodentate ligands. They are approaching the metal ion, but this time they are not approaching through the axis. See, the axes are like this. This is your z axis, and this is your x axis, and this one could be your y axis. The 4 ligands are approaching the metal ion from between the axis. They are not coming along the axis. Then see what happens. This field is called tetrahedral field. So introduction of a tetrahedral ligand field can be visualized by coinciding the center of a cube with the origin of the Cartesian coordinate system that I showed you in the figure. Then you have 4 unidentate ligands in a tetrahedral complex which approach the nucleus of the metal ion through the alternate diagonals of the opposite faces of the cube. Thus, these ligands approach the metal ions along the planes. They don't approach the metal ion along the axis. These planes are x, y, y, z and x, z. So this time the splitting of the d orbitals will be opposite to that of the splitting observed in case of octahedral field. Why? Because when these ligands approach the metal ion along the planes, it results into increase in repulsion in T2g orbitals, because these T2g orbitals are along the plane. dxy is in xy plane, dyz is in yz plane, and dxz is in your xz plane. So the T2g orbitals will face more repulsion, and therefore you will see that the energy of the T2g orbitals will be increased and a corresponding decrease will be observed in the energy of the Eg orbitals. Then comes the magnitude of splitting, the amount of splitting. The magnitude of splitting of d orbitals due to introduction of a tetrahedral field is called delta T, and you will observe that 2 by 5 delta T is the increase in the energy of T2g, and 3 by 5 delta T is the decrease in the energy of Eg orbitals. These values are as compared to that of the energy of the free metal ion. So let us have a look at the right hand side of the picture. You have free metal ion, and now if you are introducing a tetrahedral field, then the energy of the Eg orbitals will be decreased and the energy of the T2g orbitals will be increased. The extent of splitting is delta T. The increase in energy of T2g orbitals is 2 by 5 delta T. Decrease in energy of Eg orbitals is 3 by 5 delta T. So these are some of the features of this diagram. Once again I remind you that if you remember and understand this diagram completely, then you can easily do lot of things in the basic crystal field theory. Now see, I will show you one more feature. This delta T is smaller than delta O. Can you see this? We will understand and explain the relation between delta O and delta T now. if the ions and the interionic distances, that is the in simple sense something like bond length, if you have same ions, that is F minus in all the cases, and if the bond length is also same, then you will find that the relation between delta O and delta T is delta T is equal to 4 upon 9 delta O. See, if you put 4 upon 8, it becomes 1 half. So you can say that somewhat more than 1 half is the relation, 4 upon 9 delta O. The question is, why there is a difference? It is quite logical. See, when you are introducing a tetrahedral ligand field, then you have only 4 ligands, whereas in octahedral ligand field, you have 6 ligands. So, more the number of ligands, more will be the repulsion. If you compare the numbers 4 and 6, then it is 2/3. 4 is 2/3 of 6, because 4 upon 6 is 2 upon 3. So this is one of the reason that the number of ligands is less in tetrahedral field. The other reason is the directions of the lobes of d orbitals in a tetrahedral complex do not coincide with the direction of the ligands approaching towards the central metal atom. They are not exactly same. Whereas when you see the octahedral ligand field, the lobes are exactly on the axis and the ligands are exactly approaching through the axis, and therefore this splitting delta T will be slightly less. So the above two reasons suggest that delta T should be equal to 2/3 multiplied by 2/3 delta O, that is equal to 4/9 delta O, that is equal to 0.5 delta O. So I conclude this first lecture over here, and in the next lecture I will be discussing the spectrochemical series and pairing energy and crystal field stabilization energy. Till then, thank you and goodbye.